The South Pacific model is teasing. I am Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, July 28th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click the Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to ring the bell. You'll get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evenings. And if you have a question or comment, write it up down below. We'd be happy to reply. And if you would like to make a special contribution to the cause, hit the super thanks button down below, the heart with the $sign in it. And with that, I'd like to thank the folks that donated last week. Evolution Moto, thank you so much. Long-time contributor. Mont the Drifter, also second, maybe third time contributing. Thank you so much, Mont. And SV Lone Star, a very generous contribution, largest of the week. Thank you so much. And with that, let's get to work. First off, we're going to take a look at significant wave heights, not just in the Pacific, but we're going to expand these videos a little bit and try to do a little bit of looking at what's going on elsewhere on the planet. We do have readers from, all over the world watching this. And I always say I'm going to do something for them, and I just can't quite find the way to do it. So I'm playing with it a little bit here, but we're going to at least try to take a look at what's going on, in this time of year. It'd be the Indian Ocean and the South Atlantic, as well as the South Pacific. So just starting here looking, we'll look at the Pacific right now. Not a whole lot going on. Things very quiet, and you'll see as we get deeper into the forecast what's going on there. But there's a pretty decent gale here in the South Indian Ocean with seas at about 36 feet, targeting Western Australia and up into the Mentawai Islands and Bali in that area. So some hope there. And you see remnants of a gale here pushing under South Africa. This actually helped produce a storm in the South Atlantic that targeted the initially the west or the southwest side of Africa, and swell from that is also pushing up over into Jeffreys Bay in that area. If you pick around online, there's some videos. You can see some of the first hints of action from waves over there, and getting quite interesting. So there are waves on the planet, just not over the Pacific for the moment. But before we get into all that, let's go to look locally. We're in the Pacific Ocean. We're in California and Hawaii. That is our main area of focus. We're going to take a look at current conditions. Not a whole lot to write out about. But we're going to start up in Northern California. The Point Sur buoy number 157 off of the Monterey Peninsula. We're looking at all the energy that's hitting that buoy from all the way up at 33.3 second period, really long period energy, which there is none, the whole way down to 5 second period energy. That would be pretty much unrideable wind chop. You see a bit of background energy somewhere anywhere from 16 seconds down to about 11 seconds. That's some background southern hemiswell energy. And then a little bit of wind swell here in about the 7 seconds. We take some math and try to parse out the individual peaks here that would constitute individual unique swells. Primary swell, 3.5 feet at 6.6 seconds from 311 degrees. That's the wind swell. That's surf at 2.3 feet. Yeah, I think there was some thigh to maybe barely waist high sets at top spots up in Northern California. And then our background swell, secondary swell, 1.5 feet at 14.8 seconds from 182 degrees. That's surf at 2 feet and, literally maybe thigh high down in Santa Cruz, and not a whole lot going on. Pretty quiet. Let's go look in Southern California. We'll go to the Point Loma South buoy. This is off of San Diego area, buoy number 191. Basically the same profile without the wind swell, and a little bit bigger bump of swell energy concentrated in the 15.4 second range. Wind swell down here, pretty much non-existent. Put it all together, primary swell, 2 feet at 15.1 seconds from 183 degrees. That's 3-foot surf, calculated. And, they were actually at top south-facing spots. There were waves probably in the shoulder high, maybe even head high range on the peak. And then some secondary swell, 1.5 feet at 11.9 seconds, again from 180 degrees, and not of any real value. And then our final stop on the tour, the Lanai buoy, number 239. It's showing Really no meaningful swell, no swell of 10 seconds or greater with a height in any one individual period band of even 1 foot. So kind of a slow pattern there. Primary swell 2.5 feet at 6.3 seconds from 170 degrees. That's, you know, knee high, I guess, if you're generous. And then 1.3 feet at 12.2 seconds from 178 degrees. And again, about 1.5 feet. And surf does look quite small on the south shores of Oahu. So what's been going on in the South Pacific for the past week? We're going back to the 12Z run on the model Sunday, the 21st of July. We're looking for any seas, honestly, 28 feet or bigger, pushing off to the north. We see 31-foot seas. These are the highest seas over this entire domain at 54 south at 126 east. So that's over here south of Australia, not in the California or Hawaii swell window. There are some seas at 24, 25 feet off of New Zealand a week ago, but they're all aimed south. And then there is some same sort of thing, just sort of modest seas targeting Chile and Peru, but no real, certainly not significant, and I would say hardly even meaningful swell. We're into Tuesday. A little gale pushed into Patagonia with 35-foot seas, but I think that made some swell up into Chile and Peru, but nothing particularly large. We're into Wednesday. Another system developed here. We were looking at this for some contact test activity in that area, but just really not big enough. 30-foot seas, but aimed more east. You really need the fetch and the seas pushing up towards your coast, in this case California or Hawaii. Hawaii is about 158 west, so nothing really going on there. This is in Friday the 26th of July. And now there is this system. So the Olympics are, I believe, if they're not started, they're close to starting. Tahiti, right in this area, is the prime venue for the Olympic surfing event. A gale started developing on Saturday here, well southwest of Tahiti, with seas in the, about 29-foot range right here, but not aimed up at Tahiti yet. But as we got into Sunday, the gale pushed east and it's starting to develop more. This is of interest in that there is potential for solid swell, but maybe not with the greatest of conditions. We'll get into that in a minute. And real quickly, we do the same thing. We're looking back. We're going to start Tuesday, the 23rd of July. This is the South Atlantic, South Africa here, Dungeons in that area in here. Gale started developing, same sort of gale that pushed these systems. They push the whole way around the planet sometimes, but in the South Pacific, squeezing under Chile and then into the South Atlantic Ocean on Tuesday with seas building to the 34-foot range. And let's see, I think we got to 36 feet there briefly late Tuesday, and targeting this whole area right there as we got into Wednesday, the 24th and 25th. The system backed off some, then regenerated again on Friday. So we're only talking about 2 days ago with seas to 35 feet and then nearly 40 feet, but starting to fall south some too. You see that, but still a broad area of 20-foot seas starting to impact South Africa. This was on over South African time, early Saturday morning, right at about sunrise, and then you see it wrapping around up the southeast coast of South Africa into Jeffreys Bay as of early Sunday. That swell is hitting there, as I said before. Then we go to the South Indian Ocean. Just 24 hours ago, 12Z on Saturday. There was nothing prior to that of any real interest. But later on Saturday, we got a little area of, about 33-foot seas. Let's see if it got a little bit bigger, to 34 feet. And now, as of the 12Z run on Sunday, 39 feet, again targeting Western Australia and maybe a little bit down under here, South Australia, and of course, Mentawai Islands and Bali area and all this area right in here. So swell is on the way there. So what the South Pacific is not getting, the Indian Ocean and the South Atlantic are getting. This is not unusual. Some of this driven by the MJO, some of this driven by El Nino or La Nina. We'll get into that a little bit later in the discussion. So what's coming for the next week? We're going to do the deep dive for the South Pacific, but we will not exclude the Indian Ocean and the South Atlantic. Right, we're going to start by looking at Jetstream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales. When those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a push in the jet in the southern branch of the jet right here, not the northern branch. That doesn't do a whole lot. That said, there is a little trough here, and we know there is some sort of low pressure developing here. Tahiti is somewhere in right about this area, so in close proximity to Tahiti. All right, as we get further into Sunday, you see that trough. So this push to the north here helps create a clockwise flow aloft and down at the ocean surface. It's an eddy, and that is the hallmark of low pressure. And low pressure, of course, if it's strong enough, generates winds down at the ocean surface. Those winds get traction on the ocean surface, generate seas. As those seas radiate away from the fetch area, they get the shorter period elements get groomed out, exposing swell, and of course swell when it hits your beach turns into surf. So a little, I'd call it more of a cutoff low than anything here in the far upper reaches of the Southwest Pacific, but down here in the area for Hawaii and California that we're really concerned with, not a whole lot going on, no major troughs, but that is to change. So we start, as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, the 31st of July, you see a little trough here, a little push to the north, but winds very weak. You really need, I'll say 120 knot winds to get something meaningful going. But then here we go, as we get into Thursday, the 1st of August, get us out of July into August. Boom, here you go. A certified trough. The ice line over here is about 65, and maybe even a little bit north of 65 south. So the trough just barely getting exposure north of the ice line. But as we get into Thursday night and Friday, the 2nd of August, here you go. A real certified trough developing, so capable, there you go, of supporting that clockwise circulation, low pressure in the southern hemisphere, and looking quite good at the moment. That said, the previous run of the model, the 06Z run, had like half as much strength pushing into this trough. And it's 138 hours out, so 5-6 days out. So still a bit of uncertainty. I wouldn't take any of this to the bank, but at least there's something we can keep our eyes on. Trough continues into Saturday and then fades out on Sunday, 180 hours out. And some people ask, well, why don't you, this model really does go out 2 weeks, but even if you go out a week, 180 hours, honestly, once you get out there, most of it's not believable. So why sit there and post models for things that are just complete teases and red herrings? I wouldn't look that far out, and I'm not going to make you suffer either. All right, so let's go down to the surface. It is the winds at the ocean surface blowing on the ocean surface that generate waves. The jet stream is just sort of the primer for the pump. Here is our little gale, 45 knot winds. You see the winds aimed north to almost northwest, and Tahiti's over here, so no fetch really aimed at Tahiti. The gale continues to build into the evening with 45 knot winds, nothing in the deeper South Pacific relative to California. Now this could certainly build energy relative to Hawaii though, but it's a very tiny gale. So we get into Monday, here's the gale now with 45, 50 knot winds, Tahiti like right in here sort of thing, aimed right at Tahiti, but rather close. I mean, we're talking 700 nautical miles away. As we get later into Monday, there you go, 50 knot winds, again aimed at Tahiti. This looks good in terms of generating raw swell relative to Tahiti, but relatively close to the islands too. We see a little gale trying to spin up on Tuesday in the South Pacific, not doing a whole lot, 40 knot winds. The gale south of Tahiti, it starts fading. As we get into Tuesday night, this gale is actually almost falling southeast. That does nothing for swell potential. We know that there's something forecast over here, though, as we get later into the week. We will just go directly there. First little area of winds, high pressure over the Tasman Sea, low pressure here in the Southwest Pacific, building a pressure gradient, just 30 knot southwest winds. That's probably not enough to do a whole lot. And as we get later into Thursday, winds build to 35 knots. So we get to Friday. Now here we go, a building fetch of 35 to almost 40 knot winds, aimed almost due north, building to 40 knots solidly by midday Friday, and lifting well off to the northeast with 45 knot winds starting to build in the core late Friday into Saturday, filling the whole south central Pacific and continuing into Saturday. This looks quite nice indeed, a good change from where we are at the moment. So do not despair. At least there is something on the charts. And then continuing into Sunday, we're 180 hours out. Good size gale filling the south central Pacific, not blocked by ice. It's just a matter of, are the models teasing us or are they telling us the truth? We'll have to wait and see. So what's the effect of those winds on the ocean surface? Well, here's our Tahiti system. We know it's not really aimed at Tahiti. We have 27-foot seas Sunday night, but we know it's going to build a little bit more. Monday morning, still about 27 feet, then pushing to 31 feet over a tiny little area midday Monday, and again about 30 feet Monday afternoon, all very close, 600 miles within the range of Tahiti and aimed at Tahiti. So swell certainly seems possible. You can literally see the front of the swell pushing into the Polynesian islands here. This would be Tuesday night into Wednesday, and then fading from there. Now we know there's another system. You see it starting to spin up here with, what's that, 24-foot seas on Friday, building to, I think that's, let's see, 20, 22, 24, 26, barely 28-foot seas. We'll say 27 feet on Friday night to 28 feet early Sunday morning to 29 feet on Saturday morning, the 3rd of August. That's 29 feet. And then building from there to 32 feet to 35 feet on Saturday evening. Lifting northeast with more fetch building behind that into about, again, the 35-foot range on Sunday night. That would be the 4th of August. So certainly some hope there. Then we'll do the same thing for the South Atlantic. Remnants of the gale pushing south of the tip of South Africa, kind of fading out. Another batch of energy theoretically developing. This would be targeting the Jeffreys Bay area and more the south east coast of Africa. This is Monday into Tuesday. We'll run this out a little bit further. Another series of gales are forecast developing, maybe not as strong in the south central Atlantic Ocean, and then building as we get into later parts of the model. Again, this would be a late Saturday, early Sunday, the 4th of August, with 28-foot seas targeting the Dungeons area, and the expectation is, here we go, building to 30-plus feet, wrapping, but again, really close to South Africa, probably a bit raw, and more energy behind that. So South Africa looking to be in the bullseye. And then quickly over to the Indian Ocean, our gale off of Western Australia with, let's pull this down so you can see it here, 40-foot seas aimed at Western Australia, then starting to fade as we get into Monday. Is there more behind it? Well, we'll wait and see. But we see something trying to develop over here in the southwest Indian Ocean as we get into Thursday, the 1st of August, with 34-foot seas. Not quite getting it together. And then again on Saturday with seas in the 28 to maybe 30-foot range, but kind of fragmented and not a super well organized pattern there. So, and then you see the energy again pushing under Africa. So to me, it looks like either the South Pacific, the pattern is shifting more to the South Pacific and then towards the South Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean getting a bit of a break. Local wind forecast. Now we're back to the Pacific for California, our local forecast area, North California, Central California, Southern California. High pressure strong north of Hawaii, generating easterly trades at 15 knots. But finally, a break for California. North winds today, 10 knots. It's probably not, or northwest winds, probably not even that. Monday, pretty much the same pattern. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands, 15 knots. Tuesday, same pattern. This is good for building water temperatures along the California coast, but not good for any wind swell. So we have no southern hemiswell and no meaningful wind swell expected. If anything, this says this next week is probably going to be a great time to just go to work, go to school, do whatever you need to do. Take care of business as things start theoretically building down south. So we get into Wednesday, again, light winds, even lighter winds for the Hawaiian Islands. Thursday, a gradient tries to build, but it's even north. It's mainly off of Oregon with 20-knot winds. Local cutoff, low pressure north of Hawaii, trades pretty light. Friday, winds still pretty light. Notice a little bit of a tropical system. Now, the GFS model always overhypes this stuff, so I'm not going to believe any of it. Trades light for the Hawaiian Islands. Get into Saturday. Here comes the tropical system. Believe it when it happens. But we're still in a 10 to 15 knot wind regime relative to California, so not even any wind swell as we get into Saturday. Trades light for the Hawaiian Islands. And Sunday, now notice this sort of lifting northeast. This happens, certainly southern hemi swell, hurricane swell for Southern California, but I'm not believing it yet. High pressure building, trade starting to build, maybe some wind swell. Let's see if we can get this out to 180 hours. Yeah, wind swell for east-facing shores on the Hawaiian Islands. And maybe, just maybe, I'll give it a 5% chance right now of hurricane swell working its way north into Southern California. All right, surf spot forecast. You can kind of guess this yourself. You don't need a PhD to figure it out, but we'll go through the motions just the same. For Santa Cruz, surf heights, 2 feet or less for the entire week. Winds, basically light. We'll look at the actual swell heights, 2 feet at 8 seconds. Yeah, there's some background 1 foot at 13-second period swell. So some of the south spacing spots are going to get continued background, minimal southern hemi swell. But for the most part, things minimal. We'll play the same game for San Diego. Forecast, pretty much the same, 2 foot surf, and then, you see it sort of dropping off, so there's some wind swell intermixed in there, and then slowly tapering down the whole way through Sunday. That would be the 4th of August. Looking at the swell breakout, 1.7 feet at 12 seconds mixed with 2 foot wind swell at 5 to 6 seconds. And then here we go, a little bit of buildup of swell as we get into Tuesday, 1.9 feet at 14 seconds. So rideable surf at top spots, you get the drill, down to 1.4 feet at 12 seconds as we get later in the week, work week, and things fade from there. The south shore of Oahu, same deal, surf heights 2 feet or less, basically, until you get way out here. That's Sunday, a week from now. 4 foot surf. Theoretically, you know where that's coming from. That little low that is teasing Tahiti. Let's go look at swell heights. Well, 2 feet at 6 seconds, 2 feet at 8 seconds, just pure wind swell. Then you get out here and you see 2.8 at 14.5 seconds from a very south, from 180 degrees. So that's unshadowed Tahiti swell pushing up towards the Hawaiian Islands. So maybe a little tease there. Don't know how much, if any, of it's going to get to California, though. And then, of course, the Olympic surfing site, Tahiti, South Shore, we'll call it just a generic forecast. It's not on any one particular break. And the deal with these charts is for the surf heights are built around just a standard kind of beach break scenario. If the swell is hitting a reef break that has swell enhancing bathymetry, then you need to multiply the size by some factor, anywhere from 1.25 to maybe 1.5. Top spots and big winter swells, maybe 2 times, but for the most part, 1.5 times. Anyway, you see the approaching swell for Tahiti on Monday, peaking somewhere into later Tuesday. 17 feet. I did some manual calculations. I'm thinking more in the 15 to 16 foot range, but you get the idea. And then tapering down from there. But notice this big dropout. There will continue to be surf, but this is a symptom of You typically see it when there's a lot of wind swell, meaning the swell is very local, which means it's going to be really raw and pretty jumbled. In fact, let's go look at the, well, you can see the local wind forecast here. Southwest at 22 knots. That does not do well for any of the south-facing exposed breaks in Tahihi, unfortunately. And that pattern just pretty much goes on the entire time. Winds eventually turn south into the 12-knot range before the swell starts fading out. And we never really get to trades until Friday. That would be the 2nd of August. And then you're into regular trades at about 10 knots, but the surf height's down to about 4.5 to 5 feet. And then finally, the backpackers forecast for the intersection of Tioga Pass Road and the Pacific Crest Trail, the trail that runs down the spine of the Sierra Nevada in California. The intersection of the trail and this road is about 8,700 feet, so that is that line right here. As you go up in altitude, towards 13,500 feet, you see temperatures get much cooler at times. As you get lower, temperatures get much hotter. But for the trail itself, temperatures in the, what is that, 50 to 55 degree range for the next day or two. Where is the 60 degree line? Let's see, 70, 65, the 60 degree line. So it's 60 degree temperatures getting in up on the Pacific Crest Trail as we get into Thursday, Friday, maybe even pushing maybe 70 degrees. Now these are shade temperatures. If you're in direct sunlight, you can probably pile another 10 degrees on top of that. But you see the pattern going from cooler to slowly seasonally warmer, and maybe a little bit more as we get about 10 days out. This is a 10-day forecast here. Let's go take a look long term. We're going to look at the two major oscillations that affect our weather patterns and therefore swell production patterns. The MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. We're really focusing on the Pacific here, but the impacts of both the MJO and El Nino La Nina have impacts worldwide, and we will discuss that. So we will not be leaving the South Atlantic and the Indian Ocean out of this discussion entirely. We're going to start by looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO in the Pacific, right? We're looking, the MJO is a periodic weather oscillation, has two phases, active and an inactive phase. The active phase is like a low pressure system. The inactive phase is like a high pressure system. They rotate around the planet from west to east around the equator. The active phase, when it moves into the Pacific, takes warm, moist air in the West Pacific, lifts it aloft, that gets caught by the jet stream, and then energizes the jet stream. And really, it's not just limited to the Pacific. Wherever the active phase is, it tends to support storm formation. So if it's over the Indian Ocean will be pumping, and then typically the inactive phase would be somewhere over the Pacific or approaching the Atlantic, and that being a high pressure system does the exact opposite. It cuts off the flow of energy to the jet stream, and the jet stream gets weak in that wherever the inactive phase is. So when we looked at the previous charts, we saw that there was more of a stronger pattern, I'd say, under Africa and less in the under the Pacific or over the Pacific, and that probably is driven by the active phase of the MJO being more in the Indian Ocean area. All right, so anyway, how do we know what we're looking for and where the active phase is? We're going to start by looking at surface level winds. The active phase of the MJO, being a low pressure system, tends to dampen trade winds. Trade winds are generated by the normal high pressure systems that sit over the open oceans, the large bodies of water. But when the active phase comes, it suppresses trade winds. So we're going to look in the Pacific. This is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here. This is the equator right here. The date line is right there. That is New Guinea there. We're looking at data from the TAO buoy array, a series of buoys strung across the equator in the Pacific used for monitoring El Nino. There's wind sensors on those buoys. We're just looking at 5-day average winds, the arrows. The longer the arrow, the stronger the wind. So strong trades in the East Pacific, strong trades in the Central Pacific, strong trades in the West Pacific, all indicative of probably the inactive phase of the MJO, but it's not the actual wind speeds that matter, it's the anomalies. Are these winds stronger or weaker than normal for this time of year, for this day, for this hour, in the morning and evening? They got all that data, and so you can compare what is now with what has been normal for the past 30 years, and you get a little indication. You see that little arrow right there, and it's just 5 degrees north and south of the equator. That's all that matters. Winds, trades a little bit stronger out of the east, and the East Pacific trades modestly stronger over the Central Pacific and weakly stronger over the West Pacific. So sort of smells like the inactive phase of the MJO. Let's dig deeper. So what's happening for the next week? All right, we're looking at 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies. That is the wind stronger out of the east or stronger out of the west than normal? Again, the blues are easterly anomalies. That would suggest the inactive phase of the MJO. The oranges and reds, westerly anomalies, the active phase of the MJO. But this is the whole planet, all right? For the Pacific, the date line is right up the middle of the chart. Pacific starts about 125 east, so right there. This is past performance here, so you can kind of see maybe the active phase, a weak active phase, tried to push across the Pacific in July, right there through there, and now, well, maybe is over in the Indian Ocean, but you see then another weak little push of westerly anomalies here, the later part of July, and as of today, over the dateline region in the Pacific, and forecast to build in the East Pacific. Now, that doesn't do anything for the Pacific. And you see basically easterly anomalies in control. Again, the Pacific starts about 125 east. So inactive phase, it sort of looks like setting up for the Pacific. And if anything, westerly anomalies south of Africa and in the Indian Ocean. No big surprise. Let's keep going. Outgoing long wave radiation forecast for the next 2 weeks, going out 15 days for the whole planet. South America, Central America, New Guinea, the equator there. Dateline rare there. The blue suggests more cloud cover than normal, which one could say is roughly equivalent to the active phase of the MJO. Remember, active phase, low pressure, sucks moisture up in the air. That creates cloud cover, less sunlight reflecting off the ocean surface. So some degree of weak active phase in the West Pacific today per the statistic model, but going dead neutral 5 days from now. And then the inactive phase setting up and very, very weak 10 and 15 days from now, according to the statistic model. The dynamic model, painting very much a similar pattern. The net of all this is a really weak MJO pattern, probably not having much, if any, effect on storm production one way or the other, but if anything, you see active phase sort of working its way into the East Pacific 2 weeks from now, while the inactive phase sets up over Bali. My guess would mean if you were going to say, well, where's the best potential for storm production? Maybe in the South Atlantic or somewhere in the, we'll say the Central Pacific Ocean over the next 2 weeks. Phase diagram charts, these are old. Always look at the dates, July 17th, both for the statistic model and the dynamic model. So unfortunately, we can't use this. It doesn't provide any meaningful information, so we move on. Next up, the upper level model. This is a statistic model going out 40 days. This is the whole planet, South America, Central America, New Guinea, equator there. Dateline right there, and of course Africa and the Indian Ocean. Where the greens are is areas favorable for precipitation, so one could loosely say that's the active phase of the MJO. You see it working its way across the Pacific through August 17th, with the inactive phase currently over the Indian Ocean, eventually making its way into the Pacific about the second half of August, August 22nd, and that will probably shut down most of the Pacific for August into early September, whereas the active phase, you can just see it over here in the Atlantic Ocean starting August 22nd. I mean, in terms of hurricane activity for, the North Atlantic, this would be a big red X, favorable for tropical development and also favorable for storm development pushing towards South Africa, where the Pacific will probably be going to sleep. Then we go to the CFS model. This goes out 1 month. Again, the east-west component of the wind, the blues, easterly anomalies, the reds, westerly anomalies, but this chart has the benefit of actually having at least the best guess of where the MJO is, the black line here. When it's dotted, this would be inactive phase. When it's solid, this would be the active phase. Now, relative to the Pacific, Pacific starts about 125 east, so right here. And the main area where it's most important is in the Kelvin wave generation area, the West Pacific, to about 170 west. So this area right in here. As of today, active phase of the MJO indicated over the West Pacific. And you see the reds, westerly anomalies, not super strong. It's only a one contour active phase, but it's supposed to be making its way across the Pacific into about, we'll say about August 9th or 10th, something like that. And then over the East Pacific, and then eventually into the Atlantic, somewhere down over here later in August. So that's consistent with what we saw in the other model. Inactive phase setting up. This is over the Indian Ocean, not even in the Pacific yet by, maybe the 8th of August, something like that. East anomalies building in right behind the active phase and then shutting things down in the Pacific as we get later into August. But again, this sort of smells of the Atlantic and maybe the Atlantic, both North Atlantic and South Atlantic, and maybe the far west reaches of the Indian Ocean a month out. And then finally, the CFS model going out 3 months. The forecast is up here. Past performance is down here. Dateline running right up the middle. The Pacific starting about 125 east, so right here. The reason I'm showing this to you is this is actually an upgrade from what we had last week and for multiple weeks before it. Again, this is going out 3 months. How believable is it? Probably not a whole lot, but there have been these continued signs that La Nina maybe is not going to build as strong as what was initially thought. And here is another sort of indicator looking out that maybe as we get into fall, we'll be not in very deep in a La Nina pattern. But let's just start by looking at the winds. So right now, here is our westerly anomaly pattern. In fact, we'll overlay the MJO. We'll just do it. Weak active phase of the MJO making its way across the Pacific. Again, 125 east is where the West Pacific starts, and the date line at 180, and Kelvin wave generation area ends about 170 west. So right now, a weak active phase going to make its way across and pretty much out of the Kelvin wave generation area a week from now, with a building stronger inactive phase with 1, 2, 3 contours filling the Pacific from, we'll say, mid-August into about somewhere the end of August. But then here's the upgrade. Active phase has been always forecast, but now it was only like 1 contour last week. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4 contours with westerly anomalies building almost to the date line and then pushing over the date line in October. Again, not believable because this is going like 2.5 months out, but suggesting, and the easterly anomalies, they were supposed to be pretty much filling almost the entirety of the Pacific by the end of the model run. Now with this advent of the active phase, that's not the case, or not so much. And even more so, we're going to overlay the low pass filter here. This is a low pressure, high pressure bias, or one can loosely equate that with El Nino, wherever it is. El Nino in the Pacific is basically just lower pressure, lower than normal pressure over the Pacific. So this is the low pressure bias here, and it's not in the Pacific. It started here in the Indian Ocean with 2 contours now, and forecast to hold. Notice not getting stronger with 3 or 4 contours or anything. Pretty mild El Nino signal, or relative to the Pacific, it would be La Nina. Here is the La Nina Pacific signal. High pressure here. And it was supposed to be building strong starting today. And look at this run of the model. Now there's just this big old gaping hole in the high pressure bias. and there was supposed to be a second contour. That's all gone. And then somewhere in the beginning of September, the high pressure bias tries to rebuild, but not as strong as it was indicated last week. Maybe this is just today's fluke of the model. Who knows? We'll look at it a week from now. But at least right now, some good news in the forecast. And then, of course, here was last winter's El Nino fading out, and it's all but gone, being replaced by high pressure in the Pacific. The focus, again, really is the Indian Ocean. All right, what's going on in the ocean? This gives us some signs relative to El Nino or La Nina in the Pacific. We're looking at data from the TAO buoy array. Again, those series of buoys strung across the Pacific used for monitoring El Nino. The X's, these are the anchor lines on the buoys. The individual X's are sensors strung down those anchor lines. You see a big old gap right here. A bunch of the buoys are out, so the model goes and tries to fill in as best it can. We see 30-degree centigrade temperatures, that's warm water, in the far west Pacific. They're actually, I think we were at 177 east last week. Now we're at 175, so warm water still getting pushed off to the west because trades are building over the Pacific Ocean. The 29-degree isotherm, it's also creeping to the west. 28-degree isotherm, it actually made a little comeback back to the east. I think we were about 155 west last week. So there, but then again, remember, there's no data in here, so who knows how accurate this is. 24-degree isotherm, it's showing this. I think that is grossly overstated. We have some other data that will help paint the picture. Same issue here, 1 to 2 degree anomalies sitting theoretically at the surface here. This is the East Pacific here. Doubt that's possible. There's no data in here with a big old cool pool sitting down at about 155 south, and my guess is this is actually reaching up and pushing to the surface all in here. Good news is we have another chart right here. And that chart also uses satellite data. It measures the height of the sphere of the ocean to infer whether you have colder temperatures at depth. And you can see it real clearly here. In fact, even last week, the warm pool was over somewhere around 120 or 125. Now it's the whole way back to 150. Again, indicative of trades sweeping from east to west across the Pacific, taking warm water, pushing it all up here, meaning building high pressure over the Pacific, and that in turn creates this upwelling flow at the ocean surface in the East Pacific, the classic La Nina pattern, but not incredibly strong, which is good news. Here is the results of the satellite data, the Pentad sea level anomalies for July 22nd. There is Peru, Chile down there, Galapagos Islands, Central America, Hawaii there, equator, dateline, New Guinea there. Negative numbers means the height of the ocean is a little bit lower, like 10 to 15 centimeters lower than normal. Why does that matter? Well, cold water at depth contracts. If it contracts, the ocean above it's going to sort of cave out a little bit. Plus, if you also have strong easterly anomalies here, they're going to take water and start pushing it over here. Notice you have positive anomalies in the West Pacific. Again, warm water at depth. It expands. When it expands, it displaces the water above it up. And also, if you have strong east trades here and then they die here, you're going to get this buildup in the West Pacific. Again, typical of La Nina. Again, La Nina, not good for the Pacific, does great for the Atlantic Ocean and for the Indian Ocean in terms of surf production, because that means generally high pressures over the Pacific. And on the opposite side of the planet, Indian Ocean and the South Atlantic is dominated by a lower than normal pressure regime, great for storm production. All right, so for right now, colder water, lower sea heights, all indicative of La Nina in the Pacific. Upper ocean heat anomalies is a good little historical chart. It goes back a year. West Pacific here, East Pacific here. You see last August our building El Nino, warmer than normal temperatures building in the East Pacific, driven by multiple, I think there was 10 active phases of the MJO, which produced 9 Kelvin waves. That is warm water moving from the west to the east. And then as we got into February, well, there was no more warm water left. We started an upwelling phase with 1, 2, 3 upwelling Kelvin waves, ushering in La Nina into June in the East Pacific, and now it looks like we're in the middle of another one starting to develop now. All expected. The long-term models did a pretty good job of suggesting La Nina building, and is pretty much normal. You have an El Nino. The year after that, you have some degree of La Nina. The hope is it's just not too strong of a La Nina. Sea surface temperature anomalies is current data, satellite, 5 kilometer, which is, I don't know, 2.5 miles for each little grid square here. So pretty high resolution data indeed, updated real time daily. You see, let's see, Chile, Peru, Central America, and New Guinea over here, the equator right here. You see the buildup or the impact of cold water upwelling Kelvin waves and trades pushing off the coast here, upwelling and it building. So this is more cold water, I think, than we've seen so far building out here. The official El Nino monitoring region starts right here, 120 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. So you just build a box that goes here out to 170, so out about there. And that's all that matters. You monitor that area, at least the theory is, and that gives you a good sense of whether you're in El Nino or La Nina, and that in turn impacts the jet stream the whole way around the planet. You see the sympathetic La Nina signal also trying to build in the Atlantic. Notice water temperature is much warmer than normal here. Great for feeding hurricane development. And as the active phase of the MJO starts building over the Pacific in a couple of weeks, my guess is things are going to get quite active over this way. But for now, in the Pacific, La Nina trying to develop. Let's go look at the trend. The Pacific is really the indicator. That doesn't mean that El Nino and La Nina isn't affecting the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, but this is just where, sort of the signal of it is most dominant and where it sort of does its, the MJO and El Nino, La Nina are at their peak over in the Pacific just because it's the broadest, most expansive area of open ocean on the planet. You see, so the 7-day trend, colder than normal waters, the blues, building out over the entire Nino, well, from here, the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region, suggesting La Nina is pulsing for the moment. And then the backed off view again, you see, colder than normal temperatures over a small area, but there's also warm temperatures north and south. The temperature readings 5 degrees north to 5 degrees south from 120 west to 170. So it looks like it's about maybe a 50-50 mix. If anything, warmer than normal temperatures, a little bit covering a little bit more area than the colder temperatures. So we'll have to see how that plays out here in a second. Sea surface temperature trend. These are not the official values, but they give you a good idea of sort of where we're going. In the Nino 1.2 region, this is right off of Ecuador and the Galapagos Island. Temperatures trending down, but neutral is right there. Today's value, minus 1 degree and 69 thousandths of a degree, so 1 degree. And you see that we've been down at minus 1 degree since May. We had a little bit of a pause in La Nina here in, I'll say, the month of July, but now we're back on that trend. We're not going lower than 1, but hanging about 1 degree. This is not the official El Nino monitoring region, though. This is the Nino 3.4 index. Also notice the scale has changed. Today's value, minus 306 thousandths of a degree, so not even a third of a degree below normal. You have to get consistently down at a half a degree or more to even be in weak La Nina territory. So, and you see it swings around a bit. So for right now, and we have been for a bit here, pretty much a neutral pattern in the Pacific. Let's go look at some official data. Official temperatures, sea surface temperature anomalies for different regions across the Pacific. The Nino 1.2 region, again, right there by Ecuador and the Galapagos, half a degree below normal. Nino 3 region, neutral. Officially, the Nino 3.4 region, 0.2 of a degree above normal. And this is weekly data. This is for last week. I think it updates on the maybe Monday or Tuesday. So I expect this will probably be dropping. But still, we have not had a negative reading since El Nino. So we're not El Nino, but we're neutral, biased on the positive side still. And here we are at the end of July. This is kind of a good sign. So what does the atmosphere think is going on? We know sea surface temperatures are changing down deep in the ocean. They're trying to change at the ocean's surface, but until it affects the atmosphere above it, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So we're looking at the difference between Tahihi, where the Olympics are, and Darwin, Australia. And this is sea surface pressure. If pressure is lower in Tahihi, the index goes negative. Minus 23.95. Well, remember, that low pressure system that's going to make the large raw surf for Tahihi, driven by some sort of, I'll call it an extratropical low or some sort of low pressure system in that area. So it's no wonder this index is negative, but it's only been negative for 2 days and then it was positive for a couple days. So between the MJO and tropical variability and a bunch of stuff, the daily numbers are really quite noisy. The 30-day average tries to take some of that noise out of the picture. Today, minus 2.44, so still pretty much neutral. It's not till you start getting 10 to minus 10 or plus 10 or 12 either side of zero, that then you can really say there's a defined trend going on. Where have we been for the past month? Well, we were at minus 5 and now we're basically hanging somewhere around zero, so no big deal. 90-day average, sort of a 30-day retrospective looking back. Today's value minus 1.57, so neutral. And where were we a month ago? Minus 2.57. So we still are, according to this, suffering or thankfully having some influence in the Pacific from El Nino this winter. It hasn't completely given up the ghost, even in the atmosphere, even though the models say all the things they're saying. And, you know, the long-range model just sort of said, well, maybe the high pressure bias isn't as strong as we thought it was going to be, and maybe it's not going to build as quickly as we thought it was. Well, this all sort of suggests that same pattern. So here's the 30-day SOI graphed out so you can see. It makes it a lot easier to tell what's going on. Neutral right down the center. This is from the Bureau of Meteorology BOM in Australia. They say neutral is between +7 and -7. Here was the end of our 3-year running La Nina in, where was this? In January 2023. Active phase after active phase after active phase push us deep into negative territory. This is the El Nino territory, but then the summer of last summer, things just stalled and we never really regrouped. Now we're hanging basically somewhere in the dead neutral range and no clear sign that we're moving to La Nina yet. But typically the summer is kind of a weak, the MJO is weak. And it's not till you get, I would say, September that you really start feeling the push of either El Nino or La Nina. So for now, neutral, that's a good thing. At least there's no clear sign that some major La Nina is developing. And finally, sea surface temperature anomaly forecast for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region by the CFS version 2 model. This updates every day, so we show it once a month. There's a consensus model. We showed it last week. You can go look at that online, look at last week's video. We go, towards the end of the video, we look at all the models. I think there's 30 of them worldwide between dynamic and statistic models that show their projections. The CFS model tends to be a little bit more extreme, a little bit more outside the, a little bit more strongly La Nina indicative of a bunch of the other models. For right now, so here we are, mid-July. We're actually later than that, but the actuals haven't. But supposedly, as of right now, we should be dead neutral sea surface temperature-wise. That's about where we are, more or less. This model, pretty aggressive, suggesting by late August we're down at a 0.5 degree, and by November, we're down at minus 1.4, 1.45 degrees. Now, this is the unmoderated version of the model. Here is I'll call it the fixed one. They call it PDF corrected. You know, it takes into account some other things. It suggests temperatures only falling to maybe minus 1.1 degrees. But again, all the other models, I think last week when we looked, it was only supposedly down at 3/4 of a degree below normal, which is weak La Nina. This suggests a moderate La Nina. We'll see as we get closer to fall where all this starts sorting out. So for right now, there is nothing going on in the Pacific other than that small gale south of Tahihi. Going to make 15-foot surf, really raw surf, and probably a blown out mess in Tahihi. But that should push some swell up towards Hawaii, and maybe with a little bit of luck, tiny little background swell up into California. Hurricane, theoretically, per the GFS model, south of California about a week out. Don't believe any of that. Probably the best place to put your money is on the South Central Pacific. Again, starting late in the work week, mainly into Saturday, Sunday, and maybe a bit beyond that. Seas 35 foot, aimed well to the northeast. We'll see whether, of course, the 6Z run of the model showed 24-foot seas. The 12Z run of the model showed 35-foot seas. So the 18Z run of the model, probably while this video is loading, we'll post something entirely different. So it's still a crapshoot. Way too early to know what's going to happen. But you could make your bets in the comment section if you're a betting kind of person, and tell me what you think as to how and what's going to happen with that storm in the South Central Pacific. But that is our best hope for swell looking forward. Beyond that, yeah, La Nina on track, but I'm seeing nothing that's saying it's going to be some barn buster La Nina. Maybe just a weak one, and hopefully not enough to do anything but maybe just put us in the average category surf-wise as we go into the winter and fall months, with the hangover of El Nino still affecting the Pacific probably into the December of this year. Maybe we can eke out a close to normal. Right now, I'm guessing 85% of normal precipitation into California the coming winter, and the winter surf season probably in the 85% of normal as well. But who knows? We'll have to see. It is a long way out. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, click the Stormsurf icon down there, and you can get signed up for automatic notifications when the videos are posted. Comments, questions, always welcome. If you'd like to make a special contribution, you may. The heart with the $sign in it down below. With that, we are done for this week. We will do it again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.